The night sky over Arden's moon was full of moving lights. Some were the familiar glow of human ships trying to hold their position. Others were the cold silver shapes of the Exer fleet, their long wings stretching out like blades. Commander Rian stood on the observation deck of the main defense tower, his eyes following every motion in the darkness. The moon's surface reflected pale light, but the black space around them felt heavy, almost like it was pressing in. The colony below was silent, but Rian knew that hundreds of families were hiding in the underground shelters. The colony's main dome had been sealed, its glass tinted to block any direct view of the battle. He imagined children holding onto their parents' arms, waiting for the all-clear signal that had not yet come. Rian had been in many battles before, but this one felt different. This one felt final. He turned toward the control panel. The defense officer, a young man named Korn, was scanning the radar. His hands moved quickly across the console. "Commander," Korn said, "their front line is moving. Closer. They're tightening the circle." Rian nodded. "Hold fire until they're in range. Every shot matters." The colony's weapons were old compared to the Exer's advanced technology. Their laser turrets had limited range, and their shields could only take a few direct hits before failing. Rian had requested reinforcements days ago, but the nearest human fleet was too far away. Arden's moon was on the edge of human territory, far from the main routes. That isolation had always made it peaceful until now. From the deck window, Rian saw the Exer ships change formation. Their leader's ship was larger, with an odd curve in the middle that gave it a menacing shape. The Exer did not waste time with threats or demands. They simply attacked until nothing remained. A sudden flash lit up the space above the moon as the Exer fired a warning burst. The blast missed the defense tower, but it shook the entire structure. Alarms rang inside the control room. A female officer, Mira, quickly checked the shield readouts. "Shield's at 90%, she reported. Rian's voice stayed calm, steady. "Keep shields angled toward their main line." Korn looked up from the radar again. "Commander, we can't hold them forever. We need help now." Rian didn't answer right away. He had already sent a distress call. He had already done everything he could to call for help. But deep down, he knew they might be on their own. The next minutes passed in a slow, tense rhythm, watching the Exer close in, feeling the slight vibrations each time a blast struck their shields, hearing the constant beeps of warning signals. The crew worked with quiet focus, their movements precise. Everyone knew what was at stake. Then, through the noise, another sound came, a sharp, high-pitched tone from the radar console. Korn frowned and tapped the controls. "Commander, we have something else." A small ship entering the field from the far side of the moon. "It's moving fast." Rian walked over him. The radar screen showed a single dot, separated from both human and Exer forces. The identification code next to it was strange, older than any in their current fleet database. But Rian knew that code. He knew it very well. He stared at the screen. The room seemed quieter, even with the alarms still ringing. The code was from years ago, from a time before Arden's moon, before he was a commander, a time when he had traveled far from human space and met someone he had never forgotten. Korn looked at him. "Do you know that ship?" Rian hesitated, then answered, "Yes, I know it." The small ship moved with smooth, deliberate speed, ignoring the chaos around. It was heading directly toward the Exer formation, not toward the colony. The Exer did not fire on it, but their ships shifted slightly, as if unsure of what to do. Mira glanced at Rian. Who would fly straight into the middle of that? Rian's mind was already answering the question, though he didn't speak it aloud. There was only one person he had ever known who could move through a battlefield like that without fear. He leaned closer to the window, watching the ship's dark outline grow larger. Even through the distance, he could see its unusual shape, a sleek frame with curved wings that folded inward like the claws of a bird at rest. It was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a blade crafted not for show, but for perfect purpose. "Open a private channel to that ship," Rian ordered. Korn worked quickly, fingers tapping on the controls. "Channel open, Commander," Rian spoke. Into the comm. "Unidentified vessel. This is Commander Rian of Arden's Moon Defense. Identify yourself." For a few moments, there was only static. Then a voice came through, calm and strong, with a tone that carried both command and familiarity. "Rian, it's been a long time." Rian felt his chest tighten. The voice was the same. Though years had passed, it belonged to Arena, the Shiren pilot he had once known better than anyone. The Exer ships, still moving toward the colony, suddenly slowed. Their formation shifted again. This time, it wasn't toward an attack, it was toward retreat. Rian stared at the battlefield in disbelief. He didn't know why the Exer would back away from a single ship, but he knew one thing for certain. The moment Rena's voice came through the channel, everything about this fight had changed. The control room of the defense tower had fallen into an uneasy silence. Outside, the Exer ships kept their distance, holding position as if waiting for something unseen. The strange black warship was now fully visible, its smooth armor glinting faintly under the light of the moon. Commander Rian kept his eyes on the ship. His crew was looking at him, waiting for orders, but even he was unsure of what to say. It had been years since he last saw that design, and even longer since he heard the voice that now echoed in his mind. Korn broke the silence. "Commander, this ship isn't on any official records, no alliance registry, no private trade list. Are you sure you know who it is?" Rian didn't answer immediately. He remembered a time before his command days when he had been a pilot on deep space escort missions. That was when he first met Arena, a Shiren officer from a race known for their unmatched skill in both diplomacy and combat. They had worked together on a peace mission that had turned dangerous, and somewhere in the chaos, they had built a trust that felt rare. But the Shiren Dominion and humanity did not mix easily. When their mission ended, Arena returned to her people, and Rian returned to his. There had been no contact since, until now. "She's not here by accident," Rian finally said. "If the Exer are here, and she's here, then there's a reason." The ship's comm system crackled again. This time, her voice was clearer. "Rian, I'm transmitting on a shared channel. I don't have time for long talks. Tell your people to hold position and not to fire unless I say so." Mira frowned at the command. "She's giving us orders. She's not even in our fleet." Rian raised his hand to quiet the room. "Do it," he said simply. Mira looked surprised, but she entered the command into the system. The defense turrets locked in standby mode. Outside, the black ship drifted forward, moving toward the Exer fleet. The Exer ships reacted instantly. Instead of attacking, they shifted formation, their leading vessels pulling back. A gap opened in their line, as if making room. This was strange. The Exer were not known for retreating. Korn's voice was almost a whisper. "Why are they moving away? What's on that ship?" Rian watched closely. The black ship was broadcasting a narrow beam signal toward the largest Exer vessel. The signal carried no sound that they could hear, but Rian could tell it was a direct message to the enemy commander. The two ships hovered in silent exchange for almost a full minute. Then, without warning, the Exer leader turned its vessel away, one by one. The rest of the fleet followed, engines flaring as they jumped into hyperspace. In less than a minute, the Exer were gone. The battlefield was suddenly empty, the stars bright and undisturbed once more. Inside the control room, everyone stared at the radar in disbelief. Mira finally spoke. "They just left. No shots, no conditions, nothing. Why would they do that?" Rian didn't answer. He knew the Exer feared little in the galaxy, but he also knew the Shiren Dominion had fought them before. The Shiren were fierce protectors of their own borders, and their tactics were unpredictable. But this was more than fear of a race, it was fear of a person. The comm beeped again. Rena's voice came through, calm but firm. "I'm coming. Down. We need to talk." Korn raised his eyebrows. "She's landing here, in the colony." Rian nodded. "Clear her for docking. I'll meet her at the landing bay." The landing bay was quiet, the large doors sliding open to admit the black warship. Its engines emitted a deep hum, softer than human engines, almost like the purr of some massive living creature. The ship touched down with perfect precision. No wobble, no wasted motion. Rian stood at the front of the welcoming crew. His boots fell heavy against the steel floor. As the warship's ramp lowered, he saw her at the top tall, steady, dressed in dark Shiren armor that curved along her frame in clean, functional lines. Her helmet was tucked under her arm, revealing her face exactly as he remembered: sharp eyes, calm expression, and a presence that seemed to quiet the air around her. She walked down the ramp without hesitation, stopping only when she stood a step away from him. "Rian," she said simply. "Arena," he replied. His voice was calm, but inside he felt the weight of years between them. "You've held your ground," she said, glancing around the landing bay. "Not bad for a colony this far out." "Not bad until the Xer decided to visit," Rian said. "What made them leave?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she handed him a small data device. "They're testing new weapons. This was supposed to be one of their trials. But they crossed into my people's territory 3 cycles ago. I've been tracking them since." Rian studied the device but didn't activate it yet. "So you're here for them, not for us?" Her gaze didn't waver. "I'm here for both. You may not believe this, but your colony is part of a larger problem now. The Xer aren't just expanding. They're preparing for something bigger." The crew around them exchanged uneasy looks. Rian kept his voice steady. "And you expect us to trust you after all this time? You trusted me once," she said. "And I saved your people today without firing a single shot." It was true, and Rian knew it. The only reason the colony still stood was because of her presence. Still, he felt the old distance between them, the years that had passed without a word. Finally, he nodded. "You better come with me to the command room. We'll talk there." As they walked through the corridors, Rian noticed the crew watching her. The Shiren were rare in human space, and her armor, her movements, even her silence made her seem almost unreal. But Rian knew she was very real and that her arrival was only the beginning of something far larger than the battle they had just survived. For now, the colony was safe, but the shadow of the Xer still hung in the space beyond. And Rena's presence meant that shadow was moving closer than ever before. The black warship moved slowly across the sky above Arden's moon. It did not rush. It did not weave. It simply glided forward like it owned the space around it. The smooth armor reflected a faint silver light, and the wings curved inward in a design no human ship builder had ever used. Even before the ship reached the center of the battlefield, the Xer had already begun to pull back their frontline dot in the defense tower. Commander Rian and his crew watched in silence. No one spoke as the strange ship took its place between the human colony and the enemy fleet. Mira was the first to break the silence. "Commander, what is going on?" The Xer are hesitating. "That never happens." Rian didn't answer right away. He knew this reaction. He had seen something like it before, years ago, when he had been far from human space. Only one person could make the Xer stop without firing a shot. The comm system crackled to life. The voice that came through was calm, strong, and impossible for him to forget. "Rian, hold your fire." A quiet breath escaped Rian's lips. "Arena." The Xer leader's ship moved slightly, shifting away from the direct line toward the colony. No blasts were fired. Instead, the enemy fleet adjusted its formation as if waiting for instructions from this single black warship. Corrin leaned over his console. "Commander, her ship is transmitting directly to the Xer flagship. I can't read the message. It's coded in a language I've never seen." Rian's eyes never left the display. "You won't be able to read it. It's Shiren code." The minutes that followed were tense. The two ships, the black Shiren warship and the massive Xer flagship, held position, facing each other like ancient rivals. No sound, no weapons fire, only the silent exchange of coded signals. Then, without warning, the Xer flagship turned away. One by one, the other Xer ships followed, pulling back from the colony. Their engines flared, and within moments they jumped to hyperspace. The battlefield was empty. The crew of the defense tower stared at the screens in disbelief. Mira spoke first. "They'd left just like that." Corrin shook his head slowly. "I've never seen them retreat before a single shot was fired." Rian finally turned from the window. His voice was calm, but there was a quiet weight to it. Clear a landing bay. She's coming down. The landing bay doors open wide, and the black ship entered with silent precision. Its engines let out a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the floor. When it touched down, the ramp extended slowly, and the sound of each step echoed through the still air. At the top of the ramp stood Arena. Her shining armor was a deep metallic gray, shaped for movement but strong enough to endure heavy fire. She carried no visible weapon, yet her presence felt like a weapon in itself, steady, controlled, and dangerous in the way only a trained warrior could be. Rian waited at the bottom of the ramp, flanked by two officers. She stepped down until she was standing in front of him, her eyes calm and unreadable. "Rian," she said. "Arena," he replied. "You picked a good time to visit." Her mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "I was already following them. I didn't come for the view." "Following the Xer?" Rian asked. "Yes," she said, her tone matter of fact. "They have been testing a new weapon. I tracked them across 3 systems. When they came here, I decided to step in before they completed their trial." Rian studied her face, and all it took to stop them was view. She looked directly at him. "They know what it means if I get involved. They're not ready to face the Shiren Dominion openly." "Not yet." Mira, standing behind Rian, stepped forward. "So you scared them away, just like that?" Rena's gaze shifted to Mira, steady and measured. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. They decided this fight was not worth the cost. Today, Rian could tell Mira wanted to ask more questions, but he motioned for silence. "Come with me," he told Arena. "We need to talk in the command room." In the command room, the large table was already displaying a holographic map of the surrounding systems. Arena placed a small silver disc on the table's surface. The lights dimmed as the disc projected images of Xer ships, some familiar, others entirely new. "These are the ships they've been building," Arena explained, "faster, stronger, and armed with weapons that can bypass standard human shields. The test here was simple: drop your defenses quickly and measure the results." Corin studied the projection. "So we were just a trial run." "Yes," she said plainly. "And if they succeeded, they would move to larger human colonies, eventually. Their expansion would reach my people's borders. That is why I am here." Rian crossed his arms. "Your council won't be happy to learn you came to help us." "They won't," she agreed. "But they are not here. I am." There was no pride in her tone, just a quiet statement of fact. Rian glanced at the projection. "Again, if these ships can break through our shields so easily, we need a plan, and we need it fast." Arena nodded. "We can plan. But you should know something else. This retreat doesn't mean they're gone. They will be watching, waiting, testing, somewhere else until they are ready to return." Her words hung in the air. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Rian finally spoke. "Then they'll find us ready next time." Her eyes met his. "That's why I stayed." Later, Rian stood alone at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The black Shiren warship rested in the landing bay, its surface catching faint moonlight. It looked like a shadow that had taken solid form, dangerous, but somehow reassuring. He heard her footsteps before she spoke. "Still thinking about them, about everything," he said. "About you showing up here. About what comes next." She stepped up beside him, her eyes also on the stars. "What comes next depends on whether we stand apart or together." Rian gave a small nod. "Then I guess we stand together." Neither said anything more. Outside, the vast silence of space stretched on. But for the first time since the attack began, Rian felt the colony might have a real chance. The Xer fleet had vanished into hyperspace, but the colony did not feel at peace. The sudden retreat was too clean, too quick. It was not how the Xer usually fought. Commander Rian stood in the defense tower, arms folded, watching the empty space on the main screen. The silence felt heavier than the sound of battle. Beside him, Rena's eyes scanned the display without blinking. She did not look relieved. If anything, she seemed even more alert. Mira approached the two of them with a report. "Perimeter scans are almost complete, Commander. No enemy ships detected within 100,000 kilometers." Arena turned to Mira. "Run the scan again, and this time, Look for small objects, not ships, anything metallic or with an unusual energy signature. Mira hesitated. You think they left something behind? I know they did. Arena replied simply. Rian didn't question her. He had learned years ago that when Arena spoke in that tone, she was certain. Do it, he ordered. The second scan took longer. The crew worked in silence, eyes on their monitors. Then a sharp tone echoed through the room. Korn looked up from his console. Commander, we've got something, several somethings, scattered in low orbit around the moon. The display lit up with small red dots, dozens of them forming a loose ring. They were too small to be ships. Arena stepped closer to the screen. Mines, she said, cloaked, probably linked to each other. If one goes off, the rest will follow. Korn swallowed. If they're mines, why leave them instead of detonating? To keep you here, Arena answered. You can't leave orbit without hitting one. And if your reinforcements arrive, they could be caught in the blast before they even land. Rian frowned. So this isn't over. This was never over. Arena nodded. The Xer know the longer you're trapped here, the more resources you'll use. Supplies will run low. Morale will break. And when they return, you'll be weaker. Mira tapped the console. We can disable them. It'll take time. But Arena shook her head. Not from here. You need to get close to each one. And they're armed with proximity triggers. One wrong move, and you won't have a second chance. The room fell silent. Everyone knew that sending small ships out to dismantle mines in orbit was dangerous work, especially if they didn't know exactly how the Xer had built them. Rian finally spoke. We'll have to do it anyway. An hour later, the plan was set. Rena's ship, built with advanced Shiren sensors, would lead the sweep. Two human shuttles would follow at a safe distance, carrying engineers to deactivate the mines once Arena mapped the safe approach dot in the landing bay. The teams prepared their gear. Rian approached Arena as she stood near her ship, running her hands over the smooth surface as if checking for hidden flaws. Are you sure about this? He asked. I've done it before, she replied. The Xer use patterns. Once you know them, you can move between the mines without setting them off. But you need to trust me completely. I already do, Rian said. She looked at him for a moment, as if weighing his words, then nodded. Then let's move. The operation began under the shadow of the moon, from the cockpit of his shuttle. Rian could see Rena's black warship ahead, its wings shifting slightly as it adjusted to the debris field. On his display, bright markers showed the locations of the cloaked mines, now visible only because Rena's sensors had revealed them. Her voice came over the comm, steady and calm. Follow my exact path. Do not drift even a meter off course. The first mine floated ahead, a small sphere with thin lines of glowing blue along its surface. It looked almost harmless, but Rian knew the blast from one could shred a shuttle instantly. Rena's ship moved past it in a slow, careful arc. Rian followed, matching her movements exactly. The engineers worked quickly, using mechanical arms from the shuttles to attach dampeners to the mines. Once dampened, the mines shut down quietly, their blue glow fading. One by one, the dangerous dots on the map disappeared. For nearly 2 hours, the work continued. They disabled more than 20 mines without a single alarm dot. Then, just as they neared the final section, Korn's voice came through from the defense tower. Commander, we've got movement small Xer probes entering the area from the far side of the moon. They're heading toward you. Rena's tone sharpened. They're here to trigger the mines manually. If they can't trap you, they'll destroy you. Rian felt the tension rise in the shuttle. How fast can we finish? He asked. Not fast enough if we stay cautious, Arena replied. But if I block the probes, you might have the time you need. You'll be outnumbered, Rian warned. She didn't hesitate. That's never stopped me before. The black warship broke formation, moving ahead to intercept the incoming probes. Rian could see flashes of light in the distance as her ship's weapons fired precise bursts. She moved with the same exact controls she had shown in the minefield, only now every motion was an attack. The probes returned fire, but Rena's ship slipped between their blasts, taking them out one at a time. Her maneuvers were so smooth it was almost like watching a dance in the darkness. Meanwhile, Rion and the engineers rushed to finish the last mines. The final sphere's glow faded just as Rena's voice returned over the comm. All probes neutralized. The minefield is clear. A wave of relief swept through the shuttle. Back in the landing bay, the team stepped out of their ships to the sound of quiet applause from the gathered crew. The threat was gone for now. Rion met Arena near her ship. "You just saved us again," he said. She shook her head. "We bought time. That's all. The Exer will know you're free to move again. That will change their plans, but it won't." And them, Rion knew she was right. The retreat had been a trap, and though they had escaped it, the war was still moving closer. For now, though, the colony could breathe a little easier. And in the quiet of the bay, Rion realized something. Arena had not just come here to stop the Exer. She had come to stand with them, no matter how long the fight would last. The minefield was gone, but the air in the command room still felt heavy. Everyone knew the Exer had not truly been defeated. They had simply stepped back into the dark, waiting for the right moment to return. Rion stood at the center table, looking at the map of nearby star systems. Arena was beside him, arms crossed, eyes sharp as she studied the holographic display around them. The defense team waited for orders. Mira spoke first. Long-range scans picked up strange readings from the Exer sector. "It's not their fleet something else. The energy signature is unstable, almost like a weapon charging." Rena's eyes narrowed. "Show me the exact coordinates." The map shifted, zooming in on a region beyond the official human border. The area was marked as a no-entry zone on old charts. Few ships ever passed there, Korn added. "If it is a weapon, it's huge. The signal repeats every 6 hours. And the strength, well, I've never seen numbers this high." Arena didn't look surprised. "This matches something I've heard before. The Exer have been trying to create a sunbreaker, a weapon that can overload a star's core and make it unstable." The room went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. If the Exer succeeded, they could destroy entire systems without a single ship battle. Rion's jaw tightened. If they finish it, the colony won't be the only target. They could strike anywhere in human space. Arena turned to him. "Then we can't wait for them to use it. We need to go there, find it, and destroy it before they fire the first shot. The journey would be dangerous." The coordinates lay beyond map space, through a region filled with old asteroid fields and abandoned war stations from centuries ago. Any ship venturing there risked vanishing without a trace. The crew argued over who should go. Mira insisted on joining the mission to run the scans. Korn said his skills in navigation were needed. Rion considered sending a stealth drone instead. But Arena shook her head. "They'll detect it," she said. "The Exer know how to spot unmanned probes. But 2 ships flying together, one Chiron. One human might slip past unnoticed if we move fast and stay low." Rion finally agreed. Arena's warship would lead, and a single human scout craft would follow at a safe distance. Mira and Korn would join Rion on the scout. The launch was quiet. Only a few in the colony knew the truth about the mission. They left the defense tower in the hands of Captain Vale, who promised to hold the line until their return. Rena's black warship moved, like a shadow ahead of them, through the scout's cockpit window. Rion watched her weave between drifting asteroid fragments with ease. The space around them grew darker as they moved away from the nearest star. The cold emptiness of the no-entry zone pressed in on them. Mira's voice broke the silence, picking up faint heat traces. "Looks like debris from old battles, hundreds of years old." Rion glanced at Korn's screen. "Can we avoid it?" Korn nodded, adjusting their path. But then Rena's voice came over the comm. "Stay close. The debris isn't random. Some of it's moving slowly, but not naturally." Sure enough, Rion saw it. Large metal shapes, barely visible against the black, drifting in a slow arc. As the scout drew closer, the shapes became clear war drones from the ancient Orion Wars, still functional after centuries. Their sensors glowing faint red. "They're scanning," Arena warned. "If they detect a human energy signature, they'll attack." Korn quickly adjusted the scout's power output to mimic Arena's ship. The drones drifted past without reacting. Only when they were far beyond the debris did anyone breathe normally again. Hours later, the strange energy reading grew stronger. Mira kept her eyes on her instruments, her voice tense. "We're getting close. It's massive. I think we're looking at a station, not just a weapon." The view ahead shifted, revealing a huge structure orbiting a dying red star. The station looked like a ring of black metal wrapped around the star's equator, with long spines reaching into the star's surface. Energy pulsed along the spines in slow, rhythmic waves feeding something deep inside the structure. Rena's voice came through, calm but serious. "That's it, a Sunbreaker prototype. They're pulling energy directly from the star. Once they have enough, they can collapse it." Rian stared at the site. "How do we destroy something that size?" "You don't destroy the whole thing," Arena replied. "You break the control core. Without it, the station's own systems will overload and tear themselves apart." Mira pointed to a section of the station. "I'm reading a small control hub here. It's heavily shielded, but if we get close enough, I can plant a disruptor charge." "That close?" Corin said. "We'd have to pass right through their outer defense grid." Arena's warship shifted position in the darkness. "Leave that to me. I'll draw their attention. You get to the hub and plant the charge." The plan was risky, but there was no time for another. The longer they waited, the more energy the Sunbreaker collected. Rena's ship moved forward, lighting up the extra sensors. Immediately, a small defense craft launched from the station, chasing her in a storm of laser fire. She twisted through them, her ship darting like a dark bird through a swarm. Rian pushed the scout forward, slipping past the distracted patrols. The station's massive spines loomed over them, glowing with stolen energy from the star. Mira worked quickly, guiding the ship toward a narrow docking point near the control hub. "This is it," she said, grabbing the disruptor charge from the storage rack. Rian stayed at the controls while Mira and Korn moved into the airlock. The small docking arm extended, locking them to the hub's exterior. Through the viewport, Rian saw Mira place the charge on a panel glowing faint green. She entered the code, and the device began a silent countdown. "Charge set." Mira reported as they climbed back into the scout. They undocked and pulled away just as the defense grid began to shift. A few extra ships broke off from chasing Arena and turned toward them. Rian pushed the engines harder, weaving through the station's outer spines. Then a blinding flash lit the dark. The disruptor charge went off, sending a ripple of blue light through the hub's structure. The energy pulsing along the spines faltered, then surged out of control. Rena's voice came through, urgent. "It's going critical. Get clear now." The scout and Rena's warship shot away from the station. Behind them, the Sunbreaker's spines tore apart, chunks of molten metal spinning into space. The red star flared wildly, but without the station's control. It stabilized after a few moments. When the light faded, all that remained of the extra weapon was drifting wreckage. In the quiet that followed, Rian looked at Arena's ship on the scanner. "That's one less weapon for them to use." Her reply was steady. "Yes, but this wasn't their only project. We've slowed them, not stopped them. And now they know we're willing to cross into their territory to fight." Rian knew what she meant. The next battle would come sooner, and it might be even more dangerous. But for now, they had struck a blow the extra would not forget. The wreckage of the Sunbreaker still drifted in the no-entry zone. When Rian and Arena returned to the colony, at first, it felt like a victory. The defense tower crew cheered as the two ships landed, and Captain Vale shook Rian's hand with pride. But the celebration didn't last. 3 days later, the long-range warning alarms screamed through the command center. Mira ran to the scanners, eyes wide, multiple warp signatures. "Extra fleet incoming directly toward us." Korn's voice was low. "They're not here to scare us. This is revenge." Arena stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. "How many ships?" Mira's hands moved quickly over the controls. "At least 20 large warships, plus escorts, faster than anything they've sent before." Rian felt the weight of her words. 20 ships was enough to overwhelm every defense tower in the sector. "How long until they arrive?" 6 hours, Mira replied. maybe less. The colony went into full alert. Defense towers were powered to maximum. Civilian ships were sent to the far side of the planet to hide in the shadow of the larger moon. Ground teams prepared shelters in case the orbital shields failed. Still, Rian knew the truth. They could not hold against that many ships, not for long. Arena stood with him at the tactical table, studying the approach patterns. They will come into waves. The first will test your shields. The second will strike the weak points. Rian glanced at her. You fought them before. How do we survive? Her voice was calm, but her eyes were not. You survive by making them see you as more trouble than you are worth. They will not waste ships on a fight they cannot win quickly. Rian frowned. And how exactly do we convince them of that? Arena hesitated, then tapped a section of the map far from the colony. They will not attack if they believe another extra faction is already here. It was an odd suggestion, but Mira understood first. You mean fake a rival presence, make them think they're walking into a trap? Arena nodded. Yes. The Xer do not fight among themselves openly, but they do not trust each other. If they believe a hidden fleet is here, they will withdraw rather than risk a trap. Korn leaned on the table. That's clever. But how do we make them believe it? Rena's gaze dropped slightly, as if weighing her next words. Because I can give them a reason to believe. I know their fleet codes, their signal bursts, the patterns they use for silent orders. If we send the right message at the right time, they will think it comes from one of their own warlords. Rian studied her carefully. You said you left the Xer years ago. How do you still know their current codes? The room went quiet. Arena didn't look away. Because I did not simply leave them. I was one of them. She spoke the words simply, without shame or pride. I was born on an Xer station. I served in their fleet 4 years before I escaped. The warlord leading this attack, he trained me himself. That is why he knows my name, and why he fears my return. The silence in the room deepened. Mira shifted uneasily. Korn looked between them. His brow furrowed. Rian spoke slowly. So when you showed up in our first battle, that's why they fled? Yes, Arena replied. They thought I had returned to challenge him. Now that we destroyed his weapon, he will not make the same mistake. Unless I give him a reason to think I'm not alone. Mira's voice was cautious. And you're certain this will work? Arena nodded once. It will work if I speak to him directly. The plan was risky. They would need to project a false Xer signal from orbit, timed perfectly to match the enemy's approach. At the same time, Arena would send a personal message using the warlord's old command channel claiming she had allied with a rival faction and was ready to strike from hiding. If the warlord believed her, he would pull his fleet back before committing to battle. If he didn't, the colony would face the full force of his ships. The hours passed quickly. Rian's crew worked to prepare the signal, using every piece of old Xer tech they had salvaged from past encounters. Arena stood in the comm room, her posture straight, her voice steady as she rehearsed the words she would send. Finally, the scanners lit up. The Xer fleet had arrived at the edge of the system. 20 massive shapes slid into real space, their hulls black against the stars. Signal ready, Mira said, her hands trembling slightly over the controls. Arena stepped forward, opened the channel. A faint hum filled the air as the transmission linked. Arena spoke in a deep, measured tone different from the voice she used with the crew. It was sharp, cold, the kind of voice that gave orders to ships without hesitation. Warlord Karesh, she began, your prey is not alone. The Shadowfang fleet is here, watching you. Turn back now, or face destruction from within your own kind. Her words were followed by a burst of coded signals, the same patterns the Xer used to mark high-level fleet orders. The message lasted only a few seconds, but the silence that followed felt like an eternity. On the scanner, the enemy fleet held position. No movement, no weapons fire. Then, slowly, their formation began to shift. The 20 warships turned in unison, pulling away from the planet. Their drives flared, and one by one, they vanished back into warp space. The command room erupted in relieved shouts. Mira laughed out loud. Korn slapped the console in triumph. Even Captain Vale's voice crackled over the comm with rare joy. You did it. You scared them off without firing a shot. Rian looked at Arena. That was impressive. She didn't smile. It will not last. Kiresh will know the truth soon enough. He will come again harder than before. Rian stepped closer. Then when he does, we'll be ready, together. Arena met his eyes for a moment, and for the first time since she had revealed her past, there was a faint hint of a smile. Together, she agreed. That night, as the colony settled back into uneasy quiet, Rian stood on the defense tower balcony, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the Exer warlord was already planning his next move. But now, they had more than shields and weapons. They had Arena's knowledge, her skill, and her willingness to stand with them. The storm had passed, but the war was far from over. 3 weeks passed after the enemy fleet vanished into warp space. The colony repaired its damaged shields, restocked supplies, and sent scouts to watch the outer edges of the system. At first, the quiet felt like safety, but Arena knew better. She had seen Karash's mind at work when she served under him. He would not accept humiliation. He would plan, gather more strength, and return when he believed the odds were fully his. On the morning of the 22nd day, the warning alarm sounded again. Mira burst into the command room, her face pale. Multiple warp signatures incoming, much larger than before. How many? Rian asked. She swallowed hard. 40 ships, all heavy class. No escorts this time. He's coming himself. Korn cursed under his breath. He's not testing us now. He's here to crush us. Arena stepped forward, her voice steady. Then we must be ready to strike first. The command center erupted with activity. Defense towers rotated toward the upper atmosphere. Ground forces prepared missile platforms. Shield operators stood by their stations. Rian walked with Arena to the tactical table. Last time we tricked him into leaving. That won't work twice. No, she agreed. He knows the truth now. This time, only force will drive him away. He studied her for a moment. You said he trained you. Does that mean you know how he commands in battle? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, he will leave from the largest ship, the Iron Fang. He will stay in the center of his fleet until he believes victory is certain. If we can reach his ship and damage it badly, the rest of his fleet will fall into confusion. Rian nodded. Then that's our plan. We cut off the head. The Exer fleet emerged from warp space minutes later. 40 black warships blocked out the stars, their jagged hulls catching the pale light of the system's sun. At the center, the Iron Fang loomed twice the size of any other vessel. From the command deck, Karesh's voice broadcast to the colony in the deep, commanding tone of a warlord. Rian of the human colony, you shelter a traitor who once served me. You will surrender her and your defenses, or I will burn your world to ash. Rian activated the comm link. You want her? Come and take her yourself. The link cut. Karesh had his answer. The battle began with a storm of light. The Exer fleet opened fire, their plasma beams slamming into the colony's shields. The shield barriers flared bright but held at least for now. Return fire, Rian ordered. Missiles streaked upward from the ground launchers. Defense towers spat lines of charged energy toward the nearest warships. 2 enemy ships broke formation, smoking and spinning away. But the Exer pressed forward. Rina's voice cut through the noise. Rian, the Iron Fang is moving to the right flank. This is our chance. They sprinted to the docking bay, where Rian's fast strike ship waited. Mira and Korn joined them, manning weapons and navigation. The small craft roared out of the bay, slipping between enemy fire and darting toward the massive flagship. The Iron Fang was a black wall in space, its armored hull bristled with gun turrets. Target the shield generators, Arena said, pointing to the faint glow at the ship's midsection. If we bring those down, we can strike the command deck directly. Korn locked the missiles. Firing now, for warheads streaked forward, slamming into the generator banks. The Iron Fang's shields rippled and flared, then collapsed. On one side. Now we go in, Rian said. They dived low, skimming the hull, dodging turret fire until they reached the forward docking ring. Rian's ship latched on with magnetic clamps inside. The corridors of the Iron Fang were cold and dim, The walls were lined with the black metal of Exer design, and the air carried the faint scent of oil and heat. Arena led the way, moving quickly and silently. She knew every turn, every bulkhead, every blind spot in the security grid. At last, they reached the command deck doors. 2 Exer guards stood watch. Arena moved like a shadow, striking them with precise, disabling blows. Neither made a sound as they fell. The doors slid open, revealing the heart of the enemy ship. Karesh stood at the center of the room, his tall, armored form framed by the vast windows showing the battle outside. He turned slowly as they entered. Arena, he said, his voice deep and calm. I thought you were dead. She stepped forward. You were wrong. And now, you leave the system or you fall here. The warlord studied her for a long moment. You always had courage, but courage will not save you now. The room erupted in movement. Extra officers drew weapons, and the crew opened fire. Rion and Korn dove for cover, returning shots as Mira worked the side console to overload the ship's power systems. Arena moved straight toward Karesh, her steps steady. He met her halfway, and they clashed not with weapons of energy, but with strength, skill, and years of shared training. Every strike was matched, every move countered. It was not just a fight, it was to histories colliding. Finally, Arena found her opening. She drove him back toward the main control console, slamming her hand down on the emergency override. Red warning lights filled the room as the Iron Fang's engines went into lockdown. Your fleet is leaderless now, she said. Call them off, or your ship dies here. Karesh stared at her, breathing hard. Then, slowly, he raised his wrist. COMM, a few sharp commands in the Exer language, and the massive fleet outside began to break formation. One by one, they turned and vanished into warp space. The Iron Fang's crew froze, unsure of their orders now that their warlord had spoken. Arena stepped back. This is over. Karesh said nothing more. Rion's team withdrew, racing back to their ship as the Iron Fang's systems came back online. They detached from the docking ring and sped away toward the colony. Hours later, the colony stood under a peaceful sky again. The defense crews cheered when Rion's ship landed. Captain Vale met them at the bay. You sent 40 ships running. I've never seen anything like it. Rion glanced at Arena. I have. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. Karesh will not return soon. He has lost too much pride to face this place again quickly. Mira laughed. Good. I could use a few months without war alarms. That night, Rion and Arena stood together on the tower balcony, watching the stars. You could have stayed with them, Rion said quietly. You could have ruled beside Karesh. Arena shook her head. Power means nothing if it is built on fear. I would rather fight for a place worth protecting. Rion nodded. Then we protect it, together. The stars shone above them, distant and cold, but the colony below was warm with life. For now, the enemy was gone, and for the first time in a long time, peace felt possible.